So yeah, we wanted to just start off today's session by actually asking everyone who's joined us a quick question. And we'd love to just hear what you have all done today to actually prioritise your well-being, because we recognise that it's so important at the moment, more than ever, to actually look after yourself, look after your well-being. So yeah, we want to hear from you guys. So please do just comment on the chat and let us know what you have been up to. Vic, Ollie, anything you guys have focused on today to prioritise your well-being?
Yeah, I mean, I have been for a run, but nothing out of the ordinary.
Yeah, you still manage to do that every day, don't you?
Yeah, that's how I start every single day, and it's the way I kind of keep on top of my mental health struggles, which are still there. But it's kind of my therapy, really.
Nice. And I make sure I get up probably an hour earlier than I do. I need to every morning, so I get an hour to watch something on TV. It might sound really bizarre because people like wake up to go to the gym and this and the other. I get it to watch one of my programs.
Nice.
So I just have an hour to watch something like a series that I'm watching without my partner because, you know.
Yeah.
I
like that.
Have a cuddle. Yeah.
Oh, and we're getting a lot of people on the chat who also start with exercise. Vinny gets up at 5 a.m. to work out. So wow, Vinny, that's impressive. I wish I could say I do the same, but I definitely don't. And a cooked lunch. It's sometimes the small things, isn't it, that you take for granted. But that sounds nice. And yeah, walking the dogs, and so lots on exercise and sort of, yeah, going for a cycle. Catherine's met some friends for a breakfast date, which is really nice, and I think it's so good at the moment. I guess definitely post-COVID, that's one of the bonuses, that everyone's kind of got such a more flexible work schedule that you can balance that work-life balance a bit easier, hopefully. We've got Olivia who's in Gibraltar and sat in the sunshine. Very jealous. So yeah, lots of really nice things there. For me, I got up and showered and washed my hair in peace and quiet without my 1-year-old running around. So that felt like, yeah, a nice treat, which was good. But thanks, guys. That's really good and nice to hear what everyone has been up to. And that kind of brings us in nicely to setting the scene of what we want to kind of talk about today, because I think it's a real big focus typically for L&D teams, especially, that you kind of get bogged down with compliance and completion rates and all of that kind of very specific learning that a business or an organization often needs to do with their employees. However, in the last couple of years, more than ever, although I think it's definitely been a much longer trend and priority than that, it's more evident that we really need to prioritize people actually as human beings, not just employees, not just workers, but actually as humans, and try to support their well-being as much as possible. The stats that you can see on the slides kind of, I think, really emphasize that actually only 13% of people feel comfortable discussing their well-being and mental health problems or issues in the workplace. But that is in comparison to the fact that 89% of people who do have issues, it affects them at work, those issues that they suffer with, which of course they typically are daily issues that just don't go away when you're at work. So we really want to focus today's session on giving you guys, everyone that's joined, some ideas, some initiatives of what you can do within your organizations to support your employees with that. And as Ollie said, we're going to be really listening to his story as well and what's helped him, which is really exciting. So first of all, what does human learning look like? So that is all about recognizing that your employees are actually people, both in and outside of work. And it's really important for organizations to look at supporting your employees, not just with skills for work, so that compliance kind of stuff that you, I guess, especially as L&D teams would probably historically have always done, but also look at supporting them with skills for their life and outside of work. So not just looking at that compliance perspective, but really tackling tough conversations and helping people to have those conversations that they need to have. And so what does that mean for you and for your learners? Well, here at Thrive, we think it's really, really important to make sure you're offering a safe space for conversations and you're offering support to your employees. And we provide support as well to our clients by providing programs and training content that not only is looking at that compliance side of things, but is actually addressing mental health and well-being in the workplace and covering those sensitive topics that a lot of companies don't like to do because it's tough, it's difficult, but they are definitely the most important topics that need to be covered and need to be challenged. So yeah, on that note, I'm going to stop talking and waffling on, and I'm going to pass over to Ollie, who is going to talk about his own mental health challenges and the journey that he's faced, but also share what's actually really helped him get through those challenges. So yeah, over to you, Ollie.
Georgina. Yeah, so it's going to be a bit of a challenge for me to try and condense this into around 10 to 15 minutes, but I will do my best. My journey with my mental health started when I was around 6 years old, and I remember it really clearly, and this is when I kind of knew that was a little bit different. We were over on holiday in Mallorca with my family, and we'd been out for a meal, and we were walking down this street, and as I walked down the street, I brushed this lamppost with my right hand, and around about probably about 100 meters down the road, I just had this feeling that I had to go back to the lamppost, and if I didn't, I felt like my whole family were going to die. So as like a 6 to 7 year old, I was really confused, and I ran back to the lamppost and touched this lamppost, and I truly believed that by doing that, I just saved everyone's life. But little did I know that was really going to be the start of something kind of quite nasty as life went on. It didn't really affect me until I was around 21, but throughout my childhood, I did struggle with rituals, routines. I was caught up in a cycle of OCD. Little things started to come into place. Like I remember when I was 8, I watched a film on monsters, and I just couldn't get this idea out of monsters being in my cupboard. And every night before I used to go to bed, I used to do a little check of my wardrobes. And there was 2 wardrobes, and I used to check behind the curtain, and then at the bottom of my bed there was a little box, and I used to do a little loop of the room, get into bed and go to sleep. But as time went on, I started to gradually make mistakes, and every time I made a mistake, it would effectively build another ritual into my evening routine. And it got to a stage where sometimes on a night, and I was probably 8 or 9, it's about 6 months after this all starting, with the wardrobe situation, and I was probably doing maybe 48, 50 laps in my bedroom, and I remember them numbers really clearly. And it was taking me like up to an hour just to get into bed on a night, and it was really challenging. My dad would be banging on the ceiling from underneath, because unfortunately he was in the room underneath me, and he would be like, I'd go downstairs the next morning and be like, well, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing it? He says, it sounds like I'm sleeping under Sheffield Greyhound track. And I was like, I honestly don't know, Dad. And I really, at that stage of my life, I didn't really know what was going on. But as I kind of grew a little bit older, then all sorts of things started to creep in. I was checking doors, the windows, and before I left the house, I was having to check the door multiple times, go back, check it again. And then on my walk to school, I was even standing on grates and having to go back to grates. And it was all kind of revolved around kind of saving lives, like I had to do it or someone was going to die. And it was really frightening, but I didn't allow it to kind of affect my life. Like I had an incredible childhood, and I was very fortunate growing up. But it wasn't until I was around 21 years old when my life really came crashing down. And all of a sudden, these rituals that I kind of figured out to be OCD became intrusive, like negative thoughts. And all the thoughts I was having were based around my morals, like anything that I'd never in a million years do. My mind was starting to tell me that I could be that person. And, what would happen is that I'd get a thought, and it might be something like I was in a relationship at the time, I was happy, and I despised anybody who cheated on their partners, and I might have a thought of that I could have cheated, and it would just be a thought. And all of a sudden, I'd be flushed out with this guilt, fear, and I'd live kind of the fear that's attached to the thought for maybe 2 or 3 months. and I'd be stuck in this cycle, and it was literally all I could think about. And it came into effect with thoughts, it came into effect with hurting people, doing anything unlawful, you know, might be pushing somebody or you know, anything that you'd never in a million years do. My mind started to tell me that I could be that person, I could be doing these things. And I struggled for maybe 4 years, and I was very much in the dark, and I really didn't know what to do. I'd ran away at this stage. I'd moved over to Spain. I'd left the relationship I was in because I couldn't cope with myself. And I met a person over there who was a friend of mine's girlfriend, and she was a psychiatrist. And she sat me down, and she spent probably 5 minutes with me, and she said to me, "Look, you've got OCD." And I was just like, "There's absolutely no chance this is OCD," because obviously for me, I just assumed that OCD was these doing things in order. And then obviously growing up, we were kind of within that kind of era where kind of OCD was almost trivialized. There was this whole media misconception of what OCD actually was. People seem to think it's to do with cleaning because there was programs called obsessive compulsive cleaners. And I think it's a kind of a disease that's very misunderstood. And for me now, I spend a lot of time delivering talks to companies just to trying to kind of educate people on what it really is. I mean, you know, still to this day, there's the likes of big companies like H&M doing jumpers around Christmas time saying like obsessive Christmas disorder and things like that with OCD in big letters. And it's kind of, for me, it's kind of like, you know, I'm not one of those people that are easily offended. There's a lot of people who are a lot more offended than me, but you just wouldn't do this about any other disease, especially one that's, you know, within the top 10 most debilitating diseases in the world, in way of loss of earning, loss of life. And I think people really do kind of get to a real dark place with this because their mind is telling them that they're something that they're definitely not. And at this stage of my life, I'd cut myself off. I was a hermit. You know, I deleted all my friends off Facebook. I'd stopped seeing all my friends. And growing up, I was a really popular lad, and I had great friendship groups. But all of a sudden, I couldn't cope with it, and you know, I struggled to do normal things. I physically on most days couldn't leave the house. The iPhone notes were a massive thing for me. So with iPhone notes, you can obviously write something in there and it'll tell you the date and stamp. And it got to a stage at my worst where I was physically documenting my every single move I'd make. I would write it in my phone just to reassure myself that I hadn't cheated, that I hadn't hurt somebody, that I hadn't killed somebody. And my mind was totally, you know, taken over. And I think everybody has like a rational and an irrational mind. But with OCD, you just physically cannot let go of the thought. So a real common thought with for anybody, apparently they did tests on just the average person, and 20% of people came back and said they've had the urge to push somebody, maybe when they're at a train station, maybe when they're at a bus stop or something along them lines. And of course, you're going to label that as a thought, and you know that isn't something you're going to do. You're not going to do that. But for me, I might have that thought of physically doing it, and then my mind would take over my foot, and I would literally live the fear and guilt as if I'd actually pushed that person onto the train track, and I would not be able to get that out of my head for months on end. And my life was very much controlled for around 10 years by these thoughts. So, you know, I was kind of watching my life just kind of slip out of my hands. And truthfully, at that stage of my life, I didn't really want to live anymore. I didn't really want to be here anymore. But I knew full well the people I had around me, my family, and it was never, ever an option. And, you know, 6 years ago is when I say my life definitely changed, or coming up to 7 years now, where I met Emma, who's now my wife, and we worked through these things together. And I told her, I said to her when we met, I said, "Look, you do not want anything to do with me. I'm absolutely cracking." And she just said, "Look, let's just see how it goes." And then in time, she's like, "Look, we can get through this together." And over them next kind of maybe 2 or 3 years, we tried absolutely everything. We tried hypnotherapy, we tried counseling, we tried therapy, we tried CBT, we spent thousands of pounds. And truthfully, nothing was working for me. And I don't know if that's maybe because of the situation I got myself in over such a long time. And maybe I left it too late, but, you know, it just wasn't helping. And this is when work kind of comes into place. I was sat at work one day in June 2017, and I'd made my issues clear to my boss about, or my manager at the time, of how I had been feeling, but I never really delved too deep into it because I wasn't someone to talk about it. I just said, look, I'm struggling. And he saw me sat at my desk, and he put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, look, you're really struggling, aren't you? And I said, look, I'll be honest, I can't even see the screen because I can't see past the thoughts I'm having. And I'm terrified of the way I'm feeling. I'm terrified of the thoughts I'm having, and I really don't know what to do. And he turned around to me and said, look, take a couple of months off, and the company will pay. We'll look after you. And I'd been there for a long time. I'd been working for Sky Bet at that stage for maybe 4 years. I've been there 7 years now. And something kind of flicked with me that day that I just thought, like, I've got the support from my family. I'd lost a lot of friends, but the ones that really cared stood by me. And I knew something. I knew by having that support that I needed to do something. And it was the very first day I was signed off sick, and it was boiling outside, and I was lying there in bed. And I'd been awake for about 4 hours, and that was pretty much quite normal for me. I'd keep my eyes closed because I was literally so frightened to even face the day that I didn't want to open my eyes. And the curtains were shut, but I knew it was warm outside because I could feel it, and the light was kind of coming in, and I was just like, I need to do something. And I don't know why I did it, but I went into my cupboard and I picked up a pair of old gym trainers, pair of old gym shorts and a t-shirt, and I just left the house. And I was never really a runner. I think I'd probably done a race before. I think I'd signed up to a race before and not actually done it because I was literally too unfit and too unhealthy. And because back prior to that, I was choosing all the wrong things. I was eating to kind of make myself feel better, and I was drinking way too much just to try and numb the pain. And I left the house and I started to run, and you know, after around about 500 meters, I'd stop and I'd walk for 100 meters, and maybe after probably about 30 minutes, 35 minutes, I'd probably covered around 4.5 kilometers, and I was just hit with this feeling, and it was like a feeling I've never felt before, and it was totally irreplaceable. And from that very moment on, I've just literally lived for that feeling. And I find that through running and through being able to run and use that as almost my therapy, it's almost like my OCD and my thoughts and my anxiety are catching me, but I just about stay above water. Like, whereas before I used to just, as soon as I got a thought, I used to just drop straight into the depths of the ocean. Whereas now I'm almost like a buoy on the sea. I'm with running, I'm able to just kind of stay above water, and it's been an absolute savior for me. It's well and truly saved my life. That decision I made that day saved my life, and from then I started kind of running 5 kilometers up to maybe 15 kilometers in a matter of weeks, and I completed a half marathon in September, which was a couple of months later. But in August 2017, around a month and a half after I was signed off, I just felt I had to share this message and the way I was feeling. So I thought it was time for me to really break out my shell. And I really wanted to document how I was feeling, my road to recovery, really in the hope to kind of support, motivate, and inspire other people who are fighting similar battles, you know, to kind of fight back through the same way, through the power of running. And that people kind of started to thank me for what I was doing. And we created this community of people. You know, I've got a running club of around 3,000 people now, and all over the world, all spurring each other on. And as I was kind of came back into work in September, I was in a much better mindset. Work kind of saw what I was doing. They could see what I was trying to achieve, and they offered me the opportunity to share my story at a work event, and which was around a year later. And it was called the Untold Stories of Sky Bet, and I talked at a work event. It was incredible. Got some great feedback, and from there they just offered me the opportunity through the development fund, which is something that Sky Betting and Gaming offer, which you get £1,000 a year for your own self-development. And I used that to go on a public speaking course, and I've had the opportunity to do 6 further talks at work on the back of that. Skybet support me with therapy. They support me with run breaks in the middle of my shifts. And they've literally just backed all my plans with Run for Your Mind with no real personal gain, just for the kind of love of what I was doing and what I was trying to achieve. And I feel like I owe a lot to them, because really without them, I wouldn't be in work, and I don't know where I'd be in life. So I'm going to pass you on to Vicky now, Vic, who's going to tell you a little bit more about what Skybet do offer, and yeah, I'll pass on now.
Thanks, Ollie. And I've heard your story before, obviously, and I always think every time you say it, how brave you are to be able to share your journey and hopefully help other people as well. And it is so incredible to hear how thankful you are to Sky Betting and Gaming. And do you know what? I'm really proud to work for Sky Betting and Gaming as well. And obviously my particular role now is within that field of wellbeing. But prior to that, I was within the operation as a manager as well. So I've definitely progressed and moved into a different field. So it's just a great company to work for, regardless, because it allows you to develop career-wise as well. But I do think, like, through my history of working in my 34 years, the dialogue on mental health and wellbeing has massively changed, but not for all companies. And I think that's where Sky Betting and Gaming are slightly above the trend in other companies. Not everyone, because some other companies are doing it fantastic as well. But you do feel that you're really cared for. And in more recent years, today, I only found this out on LinkedIn today, actually. It's World Values Day. And we changed our values a couple of years ago to know it, share it, free to be me, and create the next. And I think we really stand by them within the business, but particularly the free to be me, because actually, you know, as Ollie's talked about with OCD, that's a condition that Ollie's going to have for life, but it doesn't mean that it's going to stop him from doing anything, because look at him, he's incredible. And you can continue to work and be strong, and yeah, you might go through ups and downs, but it doesn't mean that it's all about that. It's, you're a person, just like you said at the beginning. And I think we've really embraced that now. That figure that you said that people don't want to tell people at work, it still sits there, doesn't it? Because there's that whole worry of, if I tell HR what we're doing and what I'm doing, I'm at fear, because the fear is that someone's going to lose their job. If I tell them that I'm struggling, there's a fear, innate fear, that I'm going to lose my job because I can't work to the same capacity at this time. But, you know, a real key message is that difficult times do pass. Things can get better. Sometimes we just need to give it a bit of time. Like, we've got loads of different things which I'll talk through, but one of the, I think I mentioned it to you, Georgina, the last time we caught up, is we don't call HR in Sky Betting and Gaming. It's actually called people support.
Yeah, I really love that.
Yeah, it's just a simple rephrasing, and actually something really small and simple like that can absolutely change somebody's mindset to go and talk to that team, because there is that innate fear sometimes of HR, the traditional HR that, you know, I'm typically part of HR, I'm part of that world, I'm in the people team, but there is like a typical fear. But actually, being able to talk to HR, and this is how we educate our managers about it as well. If somebody's going through something, regardless, mental health or otherwise, we encourage them to speak to people support as soon as possible within that journey, so that we know that we're supporting that person with as much as possible as early on. Because as we know, mental health and otherwise, yes, we need them reactive measures there for when there is a crisis point, but we also need to be proactive and make sure that we've got measures in place to support people to hopefully prevent them from getting to crisis point. So in line with that, we do loads more stuff that we do. We've got the traditional benefits that I'm sure most companies who are with us today have, such as employee assistance programs. We are very lucky, as Ollie mentioned, we have private healthcare through Bupa as a company, which you can use for physical. And I like what Vinny's put. I always correct people. We are not HR. We are the people team. I love that, Vinny. Love that. But it's a massive thing, isn't it? It really can change people's mindsets. But yeah, we have this the more standardized benefits that we would, that I presume most people have, but we are trying to develop and evolve them. We've gone through a pandemic, so the stuff that we used to offer might not necessarily cater to what we used to before. So one of the big things that we've launched in recent months is something called Gym Pass. And Gym Pass is really interesting, actually, because I think the name of it makes it feels like it's all about gyms, but it's not. It's a really incredible service. So one of the things that we used to have, because our main office is based in Leeds, is gyms around the local area of the office, which people could utilise as and when they wanted. And we do work in a really flexible workplace as well. But obviously, as COVID happened, we realised that really them benefits aren't going to fit everyone now. Our office is open, so you can utilise the office if you want, but still, now we're working in this hybrid environment. Does that really work? So we now have offered Gym Pass and partner with them, which allows you to use any gym not any gym within reason that's on the app, but for free, basically. But within that, there's also, so not only do I now have a gym on my doorstep, which I can walk to, which is, I'm really happy about, but they also have financial wellbeing apps on there. Calm, so meditation app, there's Calm on there. We actually provide Unmind as a wellbeing app separately as well. So we're always trying to think about how can we improve our benefits for our people to support them to what fits right for them. Because like you say, not everything, I know that Ollie loves his running. He's incredible at running. I'm not into weight training, so I'm useless at running, but that's my physical fitness that keeps me healthy and happy. But also what we try to do as well is we try to allow people to have outlets, because what we do know is we are educating our managers. I actually host some mental health training for managers, but not everybody always feels comfortable talking to the managers. So what we've got is, which I'm sure some other companies do have as well, is we have mental health first aiders, and they are quite popular. We call them wellbeing champions, and we've really got them to train them to actually talk to people about how they're feeling. But also encourage well-being within their areas as well, because we're quite a big business. So we utilise them in their local areas, in their local communities, to talk about the initiatives and the things that we've got ongoing to help people know what's available to them, because it's easy for us not to go for it when we're not in crisis, but actually there is a point of actually we need to be focusing on our well-being all the time. It's not just at that point at crisis when we go to a well-being champion. So we're really trying to encourage it. Do you know, now we're in this hybrid world which we're all adjusting to. Social connection is really important. It's really important. So if you've maybe come into a business fully remote and you don't have that social connection and you just want to talk to somebody about something random. I love a random chat. The water cooler chats, as they call them. We've got these mental health first aiders that you can talk to, and we've actually created through our messenger. So we use Slack. So I'm sure some people know what Slack is. It's like MSN Messenger. I mean, that's retro, isn't it? Just said MSN.
Used to love MSN Messenger.
Yeah. But we've created a bot in that, so people can reach out to what we call Alan, which is the Ask, Listen and Action Network, and it will alert all the mental health first aiders. So at any point, because obviously operationally as well, we don't know when people are going to contact us. It just means that somebody will be able to pick that up and have that conversation with that person, whether it be in person or over chat, messenger, however they would prefer, that makes them feel more comfortable. But on top of that, we also look at our resources as well. We've got a wellbeing hub where people can just research stuff on what they need and what they want. Sorry, George.
I just said sorry.
Yeah, so, and I'm sure everyone's got things like that, but we've also created recently is something called the Stress Toolkit. So for the people who are very HR knowledgeable, I'm sure they've probably completed stress risk assessments before, which are quite long. and quite tricky at times. And I used to be a people manager, so I've done a few of them in my time. But we've actually turned it on its head a little bit and said, why don't you complete these before you're at that point? And sometimes, you know, that's not always going to work, but we're making it available for people and their managers to create a little bit of a stress toolkit management thing. So actually they can go to the manager. I find it really stressful when this happens, and how can I manage this? So really creating that opportunity to get things out in the open so people know where they stand and what their triggers are, because everybody's slightly different. And it's a two-way conversation then, because as well, the manager can understand the direct report, but vice versa. Because it's important, isn't it? Like to be able to identify stress in each other.
Yeah, definitely. I do really love that, because I think it is just, like you said, it's just opening up that conversation, which often that's the hardest part, is like, where do you start with getting that support? So if you can just start that conversation off, that can just be the most important part.
Yeah, 100%. And then another thing, I mean, I've got loads, but I'll try to wrap it up, because I know we've got to. I'm as bad as a over talker as Ollie is, I think. Trying to get everything in.
They've kept quite on time.
We've actually got a wellbeing passport that we encourage people to populate, and it isn't just for mental health, it's for anything. And again, it's a bit of a thing with your manager where you can talk about if you've got caring needs, if you may have a neurodiverse condition, or your mental well-being, or anything that regards that you want your manager to be aware of. And it's got questions in there like, I might when I'm feeling stressed or when I'm feeling something, I will react this way. And it can help people or managers, like I say, identify key things where they, if somebody is potentially a neurodiverse, they might have certain traits that somebody might be like totally thrown off guard with. But actually, if they're able to document it and speak to them, that actually this is quite normal for me. It can then just create that comfortableness between that manager and go, actually, so this isn't anything for me to worry about, or it is something for me to worry about. And you just create that conversation from the start and hopefully get things on the table. So yeah, that's I'll shut up now.
Oh no, thank you. That's so interesting. And I think you've got some great stuff going on. So really great to hear what you guys are doing at Sky Betting and Gaming. And I guess just back to Ollie, I think it's, what a powerful story. That's just incredible what you've done, but also the fact that you've turned your challenges and your struggles actually into a positive. I think it's amazing, and you're obviously helping so many other people with that as well. So you've started Run for Your Mind, which is obviously your running community. And am I right in thinking you've also started a foundation as part of that as well?
Yeah. So I've just kind of taken it to the next level, really, with where I want to be and what I want to do. And it was actually early on this year that when I was in a really dark place, because even though I can manage it to a certain extent, sometimes it does get me, and depression gets me, but I can still manage my day through running. I was really struggling, and my brother came up to me and he put his hand on my shoulder and he's like, it's time. I was like, it's time for nothing. I don't want to do anything. And he said, no, now's the time. You've always wanted to set this up as a charity or a foundation. And yeah, I've just literally launched the Run for Your Mind Foundation. And what it is getting into corporate companies and offering people just like me who are struggling with their mental health, a 3-month running plan to work through the foundation with me. They get like included in the plan is you get a 3-month running plan from whatever level of fitness you are to wherever you want to be in that 3 months. You get a pair of running shoes, full Run for Your Mind kit, a nice little box full of Run for Your Mind merchandise, and you get access to a gym if you don't get one. We've got a gym on board, and you get one-to-one support weekly through me and the foundation. Yeah, and it's just the very start of it. We're just trialing it at the minute. We've got one person going through it, started on Saturday, and it's really exciting. Hopefully it all comes together nicely and we can help more people next year. But it's initially the idea was to get through onto the NHS through social prescribing, which is a brilliant initiative they have, where through say, for example, I went into the doctors now and said, oh, I'm struggling with my mental health and I can't leave my room and so on, but I used to be healthy, used to be active. Rather than them saying, here's copious amounts of medication, they'll say, here's a person that could potentially help you. And I was really keen to get onto the NHS, but it's a bit of a minefield. I think everyone wants a piece of it. And I think it can be done, the whole thing can be done much more simpler by, helping people who are more, similar to me, and helping companies get their employees back into work if they're off sick, or help them managing their own mental well-being better. And I was missing a trick initially, and I think that's probably the way forward. So all been well. Yeah, it's really exciting times, and
amazing.
Yeah.
It sounds so good. And so I guess as an employer, Sky Betting and Gaming are behind you on that and fully supportive of like your run for your mind work and things, which is great.
Yeah, they're massive. They support me through everything. They've helped me with the talks, and from even there's some directors have been involved recently, helping me maybe trying to take my talks to the next level too, get in touch with the right people. The foundation, I have mentioned it to them, but they sometimes just have to calm me down a little bit, because I'm like one thing after another, and they're like, so they're just like, yeah. But we are look. I did
Amazing.
mention it to the directors. I mentioned it to one of the directors in the section I work in, and she said it's very, very much what Sky Bet are about. It's very quirky, and they are willing to trial it out within Sky Betting and Gaming next year once it's all come together. So yeah, it's really exciting times, and we'll see where it goes.
Amazing. And Vic, thank you so much for sharing all of those initiatives and what you guys are up to. Really, really good to hear. And I think because this session is all about sharing ideas and just helping each other and supporting each other, it'd be really good to actually hear from anyone who's on this, to just hear what wellbeing initiatives you're running currently within your organisation, and anything that has worked really well. We would love to hear from it in the chat. And actually, I can just see that Catherine has put in the chat the Just Eat values, which are lead, deliver, and care. So that's some really great values at Just Eat. And yeah, it sounds like they're a really good company to work for as well, that are also above the trend. So it's good to hear that there's definitely other organisations out there, and hopefully we can keep bringing others up to speed. So we have also, while we're just waiting to hear from sort of what everyone else is up to, we've got a couple of questions actually in the Q&A. So I'm gonna, I think, pass these over to you guys. So first of all, Kevin has asked, any recommendations on how you can address mental health and well-being during one-to-ones? So Vic, I guess that's probably one for you.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we talk about this quite a lot, and I think there's the fear of saying something wrong when it comes to mental health and well-being. There's some real core basics of, do you know, if you think about it on a day-to-day basis, how many times somebody says, how are you? And we get an automated response of, yeah, I'm grand.
Yeah.
I mean, if you say grand, I say grand, but yeah, I'm fine. And that's the standard sort of response that you would get. And I think this is when you have them opportunities in one-to-ones, is you could take the first answer, but it's actually going, okay, so no, actually, how are you? Tell me what's been going on at the moment. And it's utilising the standard techniques that you've probably been given in multiple training courses in your time in regards to open questions and conversation techniques, but it's really delving in. I'd also state, if you've noticed a change in somebody, then address that change. Only reference your own change, only that you've spotted though. So if you've noticed something's really shifted in a person, and it could be work related, so maybe they're starting to miss deadlines, or thinking about the more hybrid world now, there was somebody who was always getting involved in meetings. Maybe they talked quite a lot or put their opinion across. They always had the camera on, suddenly the camera's going off. It's having that slightly hyper alertness of your people to then be able to go, do you know what, I've noticed that you're not putting your camera on, or your camera might not even be on now. Do you know what I mean? Where normally it would be in a one-to-one, which makes it possibly slightly more difficult to have a one-on-one conversation when one of you's got your camera on and one of you hasn't. And it's just calling it out and going, can you tell me what's going on at the moment? And then being okay with awkward silences. Now, I've delivered many a session in the time and I've embraced an awkward silence, and I'm never going to like it because I've got something inside of me wanting to go, break the awkward silence, Vic. But actually, it's much more likely that that other person needs that time for reflection at that point, because they are going through something maybe challenging at that time. They may need just that time to sit there and figure out how to word it in their own way, that they feel comfortable with. So I definitely think opening it up, sitting with them awkward silence, and the boring thing of active listening, it's the power of that. Like, you don't have to have all the answers. Like in Ollie's case, Ollie wouldn't have expected his manager to be an expert in OCD, but he just needed that. Am I right, Ollie?
I mean, absolutely, yeah. I think you're spot on. You just don't know, do you? You just don't know what people are going through, and not everyone wants to talk about it. I mean, at times I didn't even know what was going on myself, so it's hard to explain when if you're having these thoughts, or you're worrying, or suicidal thoughts, for example. How do you talk about that, and how do you open up about it? So it's difficult. So it's just breaking down that conversation.
Yeah. And not having your own voice. We are more crippled by our own voice in our head of, oh my God, I'm going to say the wrong thing. And then we stop listening to that person because we're so worried about what we're doing. So I think it's just embracing it, challenging yourself, because it's mainly we're battling with our own fear about that conversation. And that person just needs somebody to air what they're going through with. And then you can talk through the solutions together. Because I think, especially as people, we often want to fix things and try and throw the solutions in straight away. And, particularly with mental health, that's not something that we can do. It's about finding solutions or finding the support with that person. So what can I do to help you through this time?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Vic. And then we've got another question. So with more working from home, how can we do more to combat loneliness?
Wow, it's a big question.
It is a big question, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a really tough one. And I suppose this is where it's, you need to create that knowledge within the business, and it's going to be different for different areas of your business as well. So we're in a thriving tech company. So we're going to know that certain people in certain areas are going to communicate differently. And it's finding out, what do people need and what do people want? We do lots of things like big hybrid events now. So if people are comfortable with coming in and socializing, so they get that connection, but vice versa, if people still want to stay at home, we've created things like coffee chat channels. So people can start talking to people on one-on-one, if just to somebody they've never met before, not even just as a wellbeing champion thing, and just promoting social activities such as maybe doing outside activities. So we do charities of the year and things like that. So we do things like a 3 Peaks challenge. So if people want to socialize and meet people, they could do it in a way that they might feel comfortable. I mean, the 3 Peaks is a challenge in itself. I've done it. I wouldn't recommend it for everybody. We do outdoor activities for people who maybe don't feel comfortable still at, coming into an office or being in close proximity to people, because we're still going through a pandemic. The reality of it is, it's a challenging one. It's a real challenge.
Yeah.
But I think it's just not having a fear to try things. And if it doesn't work, I think sometimes, particularly wellbeing, and I am fully aware of this, we like data, business like data, but it's not always easy to quantify with wellbeing. So having that flexibility to try things. If they don't work, they don't work, but then try something new.
Yeah, like that. That's great. A good answer for a very big, tough question. So a question for you, Ollie. Someone here says, run for your mind sounds amazing. Any tips to get started with running if you're not a runner?
Firstly, thanks very much. It's with running, the best thing to do is there's a brilliant app called the Couch to 5K app, which I think a lot of people who have never ran before find it really beneficial. But I think the difficulty sometimes with that app is kind of staying on track with it without having anyone to actually kind of push you forwards with it. So if you were interested in getting into running, I'd absolutely love to help you. You can get in touch with me at Run For Your Mind on Instagram, Run For Your Mind on Facebook, or Oliver Newton on LinkedIn, or runforyourmind@outlook.com, and I can get you a plan sent out. I think it'll be a little bit better than the standard one. I think the difficulty with Couch to 5K is you can be maybe 20 years old starting to run, or you can be 70-year-olds, and I think you're all following a similar plan is what I'm led to believe. So, we'd be able to kind of get you something a little bit more tailored to what you want to do, and get you out running. And I think it's easy with running, and this is the problem that a lot of people have, is they come to me and they're like, oh, I want to start running. What trainers do I buy? And I'm like, well, these are good trainers. You can buy these. But then I get a message two weeks later saying, my knee's hurting, I can't run. And I'm just like, well, you've just ran like 5-6K every single day. And I think that's the problem with running. I think you need to be really careful when you're starting up. And if you're careful at first and you kind of persevere with them, them few times initially where it's going to be a little bit slow, it's going to be easing your way in, you'll kind of reap the rewards in a month or so's time when you can get up to running a couple, 2 or 3K, and then up to 5K within a couple of months. So yeah, please get in touch. I'd love to help you. I really would.
And maybe you can help someone else who's got a question, which is, apart from running with music, are there any alternatives to making running more enjoyable? Which I would ask for as well, because I'm not a big fan of running.
Yeah, I think a lot of people say this to me, and I'm not really one to. I don't really run with music, and I've never really run with headphones, because I just like being outside, and I think for me, and I can see why people get bored, but I just try and find places that are scenic. I'll do a lot of running along the canal where it's quiet, I can't get disturbed. But for me, it honestly is. It's like I wake up in the morning, I feel dreadful. I have a glass of water by my bed, and I have my kit lined up because I know what I need to do as soon as I get up. And I down my glass of water, I put my kit on, and I get straight out that door. And it's like OCD's chasing me. That's what it feels like. And it feels like the further I run, the further I get away, and the easier it becomes. And then my day becomes much better. And I can see why people don't enjoy it so much. Some people are like, I can't believe, how can you do that? But another great option is podcasts. I think they're brilliant. If I do listen to anything, I will listen to a podcast. I listen to one called the Run Pod. But if you're bored of running, you probably don't want to listen to someone talk about boring running as well. But it's with Jenny Faulkner, and it's brilliant. She just gets all these great guests on, like film stars, TV stars, and celebrity personalities, and just talks to them about their own running journeys. It's been brilliant for me to listen to. It's just really easy. So I'd say podcasts maybe, but apart from that, it's one of them, isn't it? You either love it or you hate it.
I guess as well, though, it's probably one of those of, like, with any type of exercise, it's clinging on to the feeling of once you've done it, and those endorphins that are released, and the good feeling that you ultimately always pretty much have after you've done exercise. So for me, definitely that's like something I have to try and think about when I'm gonna get myself out and get exercising, is how it's going to make you feel after.
Yeah, I mean, some days I can't say I'm not one of them people who front flips out of bed every morning and thinks I'm going to go for a run. Some days I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to run at all. But I know the benefits of it, and the difference it makes to my days. And don't get me wrong, it's ridiculous. Some days I'm running, most weeks I probably average 100 kilometers a week, which is probably like 15 kilometers a day on average. Not every day I run 15K. Some days I might run 30K, depending on how bad my head is. It's purely just managing my mind through my running, and it's kind of all I really know now. And it's more of, it's something I need to do rather than I want to do sometimes. But I think it's important for me to do it, and I think it's not going to be easy for everybody. But I understand when people do say to me, I mean, I don't really understand it, but I can see why people find it boring.
We've actually got as well, someone else has said that running with friends is best. So yeah, I guess being able to go running with other people and having some kind of conversation and someone that can just motivate you through is also a really good idea as well. So thank you for that. And then, sorry, just back to the chat as well. So Vinny has shared that they have a remote workforce, and he's paired up his people by setting aside a specific week for coffee dates. So that's a really good idea, like that. And they've issued our people with a list of fun questions. So, for example, if you could shrink down any animal and carry it around in your pocket, which one would you choose? So that's a really good idea, and I guess just good to get that kind of conversation going and discussion, and then also issuing them with some healthy snacks. So thanks for sharing that, Vinny. I think that sounds really good. And that actually does also give a suggestion for another question that we've got, which is, what do you think is the best way to connect with someone remotely and initiate contact that would usually be effortless in the office? So I think a good idea from Vinny is setting up those coffee dates if they are remote, or even if you have the opportunity to meet and have a coffee date face to face, but definitely remote, setting the time aside to just take that coffee and have an informal chat with someone is a really, really good idea. Is there anything else that you do, Vic, or that you would suggest there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a fantastic idea. And I think particularly what I have started doing, because I've got recurring meetings in with certain people who I connect with through work, but not necessarily have to for stakeholder wise all the time. They may have been previous stakeholder or vice versa, but actually to keep that relationship going, to make sure I'm still well and I've got a nice network within work as well, is I have some like recurring meetings, and I try to do that with new people as well. So, who may not even particularly be in my team, but I know that I did it with somebody who started, who we indirectly were working on projects together. But actually I thought, you know what, like, let's make this person feel included, let's get them a social network. And then since then, because they started during fully remote, I've now met up with them for lunch and I've formed a friendship. So I think it's maybe pushing yourself out of a comfort zone to do something that you wouldn't have had to do before. Like, I wouldn't have had to book in recurring meetings with certain people because I would have seen them every day in the office or every other day in the office, and I would have had a 15-minute catch up with them when I was buying a bacon sandwich or something like that. You know, these natural things would have happened where you form them relationships. But actually, it's maybe just thinking I have to be a little bit more forced in my mindset to create these relationships now, and then naturally they'll come to light, and you know, you might exchange numbers and vice versa. But I think it is just thinking, oh, does this feel natural? Does it feel a bit unnatural? But hopefully it'll work, basically.
Yeah, that sounds good. And then we've just got one last question before we sort of close up and finish off. So what would be your advice for someone looking to set tangible goals related to mental health in their company?
It's a really good question. So I'm reading this, and I might be wrong because I feel like I don't think it's an individual question. I feel like they're talking about strategy within mental health within a business. Hopefully I have got that right, Elliot. So how we built our strategy, now it is a core focus within our people team, but how I built the wellbeing strategy is I actually broke it down into the 4 key pillars of physical wellbeing, mental wellbeing, social wellbeing, and then financial wellbeing. So I know that as a wellbeing strategy, we are trying to cover all parts. But when it comes to mental health, we work with our people support, HR, our teams. We utilise that data that we've got from ER cases, but we also go out and ask the people what they need as well. So we have surveys, we use Office Vibe, we're moving over to Peloton. We don't want to kill the company with surveys though, because, you know, surveys after surveys can be quite exhausting. So we do focus groups, but we try and do it based on feedback from the business, and then tailored stuff that's needed. So things like the mental health awareness training for managers is because we've got that from people being unwell and then them saying, I didn't know how to have a conversation with the manager. Or the manager then coming to us going, I don't know how to manage this. And that well, I'll give this to HR or people support. And it's like, no, actually, you need to own it, and then we will support you in the people team to how we can help that person. And I think it's using some data, but getting feedback. I'm setting up at the moment some working groups to understand work-related stress in more depth from our actual people. We know it's something that, probably most companies experience, but actually trying to pull out the feedback in different ways from different people and how it impacts different areas. Because I think that's the thing is, particularly with wellbeing, and to be inclusive, you can't always go with a blanket approach. You need to actually figure out how it's impacting different people in different areas to really make impact. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. That's great. Okay, thank you. Well, I think that's it on the question front. So yeah, thank you for all of the suggestions and ideas that everyone shared today. It's been really, really great to hear the story from Ollie and what Sky Betting and Gaming are doing to help. So hopefully it's helped those that have joined us to get some inspiration of what they can do for their organisation and for their employees. So yeah, I just wanted to quickly touch before we leave that for anyone who hasn't heard of Thrive, we do have a wealth of resources available to really support your employees with these kind of topics. So tackling these difficult conversations. So as you can see on these images, we've got a lot of content available covering things like your mental health and well-being, but also hot topics. So we've done some things on being kind, and of course we did a lot on COVID when that was happening. So it's just making sure that the content you're providing is current, and that's absolutely what we do here at Thrive. We have this month, just as an example, we've focused on creating campaigns full of content and resources on Black History Month, but also Baby Loss Awareness Week, which is a topic that affects so many people. So it's all about bringing those difficult topics to light and talking about them in the workplace. So yeah, if anyone's interested and wants to find out more about what we can do at Thrive, then please do feel free to reach out to myself. My email and details are on here, but you can also contact me on LinkedIn. And then I know that Vic and Ollie are more than happy for people to get in touch with them directly as well. If anyone has any questions, or as Ollie said, if anyone wants any help with starting to get running and things. So Vic and Ollie, what are the best ways to reach you?
I think you'll find me quite easily on LinkedIn. I don't know if there's many Victoria Jablonskis out there. So you should be able to find me, and my job role was on there. So inclusion, wellbeing, and community lead. So if you want to find me on LinkedIn, that's probably the easiest way. And just connect. It's nice to get connected with more people. So feel free to connect with me there.
Yeah, same through LinkedIn's great. Oliver Newton on LinkedIn, and but if you're wanting to follow more of my journey with where I'm going with Run for Your Mind, I'm Run for Your Mind on Instagram, which run with the number 4 your mind, and Facebook. If you wanted to get involved in the running club, I'm on Strava. But yeah, get in touch in any way. Love to hear from you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Vic and Ollie, and everyone that's joined us. Really appreciate it. And the recording will be available over the next couple of days as well, and sent out to everyone that's signed up and that's joined. And yeah, thanks for joining us, and we hope to speak to everyone soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.